My name is Anna, and I'm 25 years old. Today, I want to share a story from my childhood, a story that's equal parts thrilling and terrifying. It's a memory that has stayed with me all these years, and even now, when I think about it, I feel a chill run down my spine. When I was a child, I spent every winter in a small, picturesque village nestled in the mountains. The village was a magical place, especially in winter. The snow-covered landscape looked like something out of a postcard, and the air was always crisp and fresh. My friends and I loved playing outside, building snowmen, sledding down hills, and exploring the woods that surrounded the village. One of our favorite games was hide and seek. We'd play it for hours, hiding in the most creative spots we could find. But one winter day, a simple game of hide and seek turned into something I'll never forget. It was a cold afternoon, and the sun was already beginning to set. My friends and I decided to play one last game before heading back to the village. There were 6 of us, and we split into 2 teams. One team would count to 300, while the other team hid. I was on the hiding team, and as soon as the counting started, I ran as fast as I could into the woods. The forest was quiet, the only sound being the crunch of snow beneath my boots. I found the perfect hiding spot, a large hollowed-out tree trunk covered in snow and pine branches. I crawled inside, careful not to make any noise, and waited. The minutes ticked by, and soon it began to get dark. I could hear the distant voices of my friends calling out to each other, but no one came near my hiding spot. As the darkness deepened, the forest grew eerily quiet. The voices of my friends faded away, and I realized I was completely alone. I stayed still, not wanting to give away my position. But as the minutes turned into what felt like hours, I started to feel uneasy. The cold was seeping into my bones, and my legs were cramping from staying in the same position for so long. Just as I was about to give up and head back to the village, I saw something that made my heart stop. A faint light flickered in the distance. At first, I thought it was one of my friends with a flashlight, but as the light grew closer, I realized it wasn't coming from the direction of the village. It was coming from deeper in the woods. My breath caught in my throat as I saw the shadowy figure of a man holding the flashlight. He was tall, with a long coat that billowed in the wind, and he moved with a slow, deliberate pace. I couldn't see his face, but something about him felt off. He didn't look like anyone from the village, and he certainly didn't look like a hunter or a traveler. I stayed as still as I could, hoping he wouldn't notice me. But then the branches around me shifted, and a loud crack echoed through the forest. The man stopped in his tracks and turned his flashlight toward the sound. The beam of light swept over the tree trunk, and for a moment, I thought he had seen me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Desperate to distract him, I grabbed a nearby stick and threw it as far as I could. The stick landed with a soft thud in the snow, and the man turned his flashlight toward the sound. I didn't waste a second. I scrambled out of the tree trunk and ran as fast as I could through the snow, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't look back. I just ran, my only thought to get as far away from that man as possible. When I finally reached the edge of the forest, I saw my friends gathered near the frozen pond. They were laughing and talking, completely unaware of what had just happened. When they saw me, they stopped and stared. "Anna, what's wrong?" my best friend Sarah asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I told them everything, the man in the woods, the flashlight, the way he had turned toward me. Their faces turned pale, and Sarah grabbed my arm. "I heard there's a man who escaped from a nearby town," she whispered. "They say he's dangerous." What if it was him? We quickly called the other kids and told them to stay out of the woods. That night, we huddled together in the village, talking about what had happened. Some of my friends thought I had imagined it, but I knew what I had seen. The man in the woods was real, and he wasn't just a figment of my imagination. A few days later, we decided to go back to the forest to see if we could find any clues. We packed our bags with food, flashlights, and warm clothes, and set out early in the morning. The forest was quiet, the only sound being the crunch of snow beneath our boots. We searched for hours, but found nothing. Just as we were about to give up, we ran into an old man from the village. He was wearing a tattered hunting jacket and carrying a rusty shovel. "What are you kids doing out here?" he asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. We told him about the man in the woods, and he listened carefully. When we finished, he nodded and said, "I think I know who you're talking about. That wasn't a dangerous man. It was me. I was out here looking for some tools I lost during the winter. I must have scared you, huh?" We all froze. It was him. The man I had seen in the woods was just a harmless villager looking for his tools. My friends laughed and teased me, saying I had overreacted. But even though I knew the truth, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in my chest. For weeks after that, I avoided the forest. But as time passed, I began to miss it. The tall trees, the soft ground, the quiet sounds of nature. One sunny afternoon, Sarah convinced me to go back. "We'll stay close to the path," she promised. "Nothing bad will happen." We walked into the forest with a small basket, collecting pine cones and looking for animal tracks in the snow. It felt peaceful, and for a while I forgot about the man in the woods. But then, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the snow, there were footprints, big heavy footprints that didn't belong to any of us. Sarah saw them too. "Maybe it's a hunter," she said, but her voice was uncertain. The footprints didn't go in a straight line like a hunter's. They moved in circles, as if someone had been wandering aimlessly. I wanted to turn back, but Sarah insisted on following the footprints. They led us to a small clearing, and in the middle of the clearing was a pile of sticks and old dirty blankets. It looked like someone had been sleeping there. Sarah whispered, "Maybe it's a homeless person," but I wasn't so sure. Suddenly, we heard a noise, a soft crunching sound, like someone stepping on dry leaves. Then it got louder, closer. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Run!" she shouted. We dropped the basket and ran as fast as we could, our hearts pounding in our chests. When we reached the edge of the forest, we saw an old man standing near the path. He had a kind face and was holding a walking stick. "What's wrong, girls?" he asked. We told him about the footprints and the noise. He looked serious and said, "You shouldn't play in the forest alone. There are people who live there, and not all of them are friendly." His words stayed with me long after we left the forest. Even now, years later, I still wonder about the footprints and the clearing. Who was out there? What were they doing in the woods? The forest is a beautiful place, but it has its secrets, and sometimes it's better not to know them.